I didn't ask you. You're not even doing it.
Where
is this coming from? I don't, and it's more annoying than anything else, but then I just let it go. I'm like, okay, just drop the drama. But yeah.
It's so interesting because I have so many clients who have poured their heart and soul into writing a book. And then the book is phenomenal. We release it. We have a launch. They have all of these great reviews. Everything's going so well. And then one guy will show up and be like, hey, I read your book and I feel like it's really didactic and that like you are doing some things here where maybe you could structure this a little differently. And then they internalize that and they come to me and they're like, wow, this is terrible. Like, what did we even do? And I'm like, first of all, it's one guy that you, and when's the last time he wrote a book?
Mm-hmm. Is that Stephen King? I mean, if it's Stephen King, I'll listen to it.
It's always one guy with zero qualifications to be giving you the advice that they're giving you. And then you're like, oh my God, I'm terrible. Why do we do that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Welcome back. We are on today with my guest, Amanda Filippelli, on the 12th Edition podcast. I'm your host, Angie Sorensen. You can come and find me at angies.com. That's angie-s.com, or on my Linktree link, which is linktree/12 Edition. Both links are in the show notes. Just like every week. Listen, that's the place you can go if you want to be part of my community, if you want me to show you how to create your own podcast and get involved with what I do. I'd love to see you there. So if you like the show, please give it a 5-star rating and review, and be sure to tell your friends. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you are listening to right now. The more you do that, the more it helps new listeners discover this show. In today's episode with Amanda, author, book coach, and editor, also recipient of awards, including Pittsburgh Magazine's 40 Under 40, and the co-founder of Pittsburgh First Premier Writers Conference, we discuss how to break the mold of what's expected of artists in society, how to not let others throw you off your path, and we do also finish off with a word on, let's just call them unconscious men, okay, who ruin it for all of the decent men out there. There's tons of decent men out there, but some of those unconscious ones really give it a bad name. And we discuss how Amanda and I deal with them. So without further ado, let's begin. Well, hi, Amanda. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really, really glad to have you on. You have a very interesting, you do a lot of stuff. You've achieved a lot of things. I'm really, really excited to have you on the podcast and talk about, breaking the mold, moving forward in life, not holding ourselves back from our stories, but instead using them to our advantage. Now, of course, our conversation will go completely different direction. I don't know. We've never actually spoken before. So who knows? But before we dive in, please introduce yourself, what you do, and where you live.
Sure. So I'm Amanda Filippelli. I work as a book coach, an editor, and a writer, and I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
And can I just ask, just because it's a dating podcast, feel free to say what your status is if you're happy to.
Oh, sure. I'm married. We just had our 7th anniversary.
Ooh,
yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Is that 7th wedding anniversary? Or
yes, 7th wedding anniversary. Wow. We've been together for about 10 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, you could write a book on advising how to do that.
Oh, that's for sure.
So you were definitely quite modest here. So if you don't mind, do you mind if I talk about some of the achievements that I've seen that you have?
Sure. And you can't see me blush, so that's fine.
So, Amanda's work has been widely published and featured. She's been in several magazines. She's been in the Balzac magazine. I'm probably mispronouncing that. TEDx Women Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh in the Round, Well magazine. She's the recipient of the Pittsburgh Magazine's 40 Under 40 award. She's a co-founder of Pittsburgh First Premier Writers Conference called Pitch, Publish, Promote. She's an award-winning writer herself, and she also is the author of Blue Rooms, a book of poetry, that was adapted for the stage and received critical acclaim. And she also wrote The Writer's Tarot, and she currently has a literary. Sorry, my pronunciation today is all over the place, but she has a literary fiction novel, Lionfish, in the works as well. And she hosts a workshop called Right to Heal, where she helps people connect and heal through the power of storytelling. And before becoming a professional writer, Amanda worked in the mental health care system for 10 years, teaching adolescent survivors of trauma how to take control of their narrative. And she continues to work through her writing workshops and the School of Writers, and also obviously as a publisher and editor and all of the good stuff. So I guess like this puts a little bit of context as to why, she totally has the right to come on and, tell us about all this stuff. And but one of the things, Amanda, I wanted to ask you, I saw on your Instagram, I saw you did this video, and it was, I could see it was about changing the myth around the creative industry and how, people are sort of like almost destined to be broke. And, unless you're like a J.K. Rowling, Elizabeth Batender, Octavia Butler, Maya Angelou, Mike Groening, Stephanie Meyer, Paulo Coelho, Stephen King, who all of them are multimillionaires or were, if, some of them are past. But, it feels sometimes like unless you're someone like that, you're destined to be broke. So why is it so important to you to sort of break that myth?
Sure. So I grew up I was born a writer. I've always known that I wanted to be a writer. As a little kid, I was constantly writing. I penned my first novella at 8. Like, you just couldn't keep me away from the page. But what happened is, as I was growing up, everybody around me told me that I better have, air quotes, a backup plan, that being a writer or creative or an artist wasn't career worthy, that I would be, the cliche starving artist. I would never make any money. And I believe that. And I think a lot of writers and creatives grow up believing that. Mm-hmm. And so instead, I didn't pursue it. I went to school for an entirely different degree, which is another story which ended up benefiting me well. I went to school for psychology, which as a writer has been invaluable to my practice, having this kind of deeper understanding of the psychology behind people's feelings and thoughts. But after that, I started working in the mental health care industry. I worked at residential treatment facilities and psychiatric hospitals, and I mostly ended up specializing in work with adolescent girls who were survivors of trauma. And the only way that I knew really how to dig in and help them was to teach them how to write about what they've been through. And so we used to conduct these storytelling workshops where we would teach the girls how to write about their experience. And what it did was it helped them take a step back outside of their experience and be able to view the things, even the terrible and traumatic things that have happened to them from kind of a point of perspective that's removed a little bit and make some meaning out of these things. And over time, it really helped them better not only communicate with their therapists and with each other, but with themselves, create this kind of internal dialogue where they could use their stories through writing to create meaning and move past some of these things and find growth. And it was then that I knew, like, this is my purpose. Like, this is the importance of storytelling, and this lie that we've been told that if you're a creative person, that there's no valuable space for you in the world, was really keeping a lot of people from finding their purpose too. So, I went back to school, got a second degree in English and creative writing, did a bunch of studying, did as much as I could to become as qualified as I could, worked in the traditional publishing industry for some time. And that was really the genesis of my business now, is this idea that I wanted to serve as an example and say, we do exist, like working writers who make money. Like, you can make a salary, you can make a living, you can support your families and your household with your art. And so I spent, the better part of the last decade doing that and helping other people kind of demystify this industry and also break down these limiting beliefs that they've internalized, that people have told them about their worth or their value as an artist, as a writer, as a creative, and start building platforms and careers around that art. So, yes, there are a handful of really successful people, the J.K. Rowlings of the world, the Stephen Kings of the world, who are bajillionaires and have sold multi-millions, copies of their books. But I just want people to see that that is still a possibility, but even just being a bestseller is like an immediate possibility. It's really just about belief in yourself. It's about perseverance, and it's about trusting in somebody who can help show you what that path looks like.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like I've written like 3 things around what you were saying. And one of the things that you said that sort of, there was many things that stood out, but one of the things I wanted to ask about, about this, you said about with the young adolescent girls, that you were doing that storytelling workshop so they could help sort of put like a distance to their stories and help maybe how to have this different story in their head. Because I guess like sometimes we go around thinking it's our fault, we have shame or guilt, maybe like, that stains how we feel, or that sort of blocks us maybe. But I wonder, when you mentioned the word distance, writing something about the past. And I was wondering if it's a bit the same of, like, like when we're kids and we're watching sci-fi movie and it's like, oh my God, look at that, that's amazing. And then we watch them as an adult and we're like, oh my God, that's like a piece of cardboard. It's like none of it looks like incredible, amazing, because we adapt, right? But from the first time we experience something, the effect has a much bigger impression, right? Like the first time you fall in love, the first time, anything like that, right? Whether it's good or bad. So is that a bit in that vein, that it's sort of like changing the outlook almost from like a grown-up's eyes? Or
Sure. Well, first of all, as like a giant sci-fi nerd, I love that analogy.
I love sci-fi. Yeah.
I think that's like a really perfect way to put it. So yes, one thing I always think of, like, you've never read a book about a character, especially a child or a teenager who's been through something traumatic or who's struggling with their self-esteem and have said like, wow, that they really messed up. That's their fault. And so why do we do that to ourselves? And, this workshop has really translated into the Right to Heal workshops. This is the same work that we're doing in the Right to Heal workshops that I was doing in the hospitals. And the idea is that instead of sitting inside of your experience and sitting inside of what it felt like then, to view yourself as a character. So I have people create these character profiles for themselves. And it forces them to take an objective look at who they were when this thing happened to them, and then fill out this profile detailing themselves at the time. And the ability to be able to look at yourself almost as a different person helps you create empathy with yourself. And so through that process, they start to see like, well, wait a minute, this wasn't my fault. Or maybe I did do something terrible, but I did it because these other things happened to me. We always talk about in treatment that hurt people.
Yes.
And that there's, this cycle that gets perpetuated. Well, we to do this work to help dismantle that for other people, we first have to dismantle that inside of ourselves. And one of the most effective ways we can do that is by telling and writing and sharing our stories and creating like this interpersonal empathy. So yeah, to think about it in the way that like you watch a movie that looks totally different as an adult is 100% the right way to look at it, because I think that we forget as adults that it's okay to go back and look at our perspective as children and as teenagers, and to look at it differently, to apply all of the growth and the change in our mindsets to those experiences and change the way we feel about them.
Yeah, no, because I love that, because I feel that perception is everything, right? I think how we perceive, it may not be everything, it's not the be all and end all, but it means a lot. Like, I think that's why when we become an adult, we have this luxury of being able to all of a sudden understand our parents better, and like seeing them they're just human, and they did, like understanding no one's perfect, and we sort of like have, that's how some of us can get like a better relationship as adult with our parents, because we realize, it's just how we, not perception, that was the wrong word, it's like interpretation, how we interpret things, right, is so important, in everyday life and especially in the past.
Yeah. And but you're right. Perception is everything. You can choose how to perceive something about yourself or about other people or about a situation, about a relationship. We've all been in terrible relationships that have deeply scarred us and have deeply taught us things about ourselves that we then carry into our next relationships. God knows I didn't enter into my marriage without a ton of baggage.
Oh, well, listen, everyone, right? I mean, I hear
Yeah.
this from, I'm not saying that as if I was married. I've never been married. But like, yeah, from my experience of zero. No, it's just like, I think in any, especially like romantic relationships, no one knows what's going to, you cannot predict, you cannot do enough vetting of someone to know what comes out once you're in a committed container almost. You know, that container of being, whether that's marriage, living together, or, you know, say like your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, like your friends or their friends probably wouldn't believe how you can be your act when you know, when
Right.
you're fighting with your boyfriend or your partner, you know, it's just like it's a different, other things come up. So I think, yeah, everyone, and, you know, I wish they would show that in the movies instead of just like the yes at the altar and then that's it. It's like, no, that's only the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. But what you can do is deeply vet yourself. And you can really take the time, and it's not easy, you know, it's a difficult process of growth to, vet your own experience, to go back through it, to see what you can learn from it, and to know yourself so deeply that even if you get into a relationship, in any sort of relationship, and something unexpected happens, or that other person starts to behave in such a way that you're like, wait a minute, this isn't what I was looking for, you know enough about yourself to know when that experience isn't right for you anymore, or how to react to it, or when to remove yourself, or when to lean into it. So, you know, the burden really isn't on other people, or the people you're in a relationship with. The burden is really on you to create those sorts of boundaries and understandings about yourself so that it's easier to navigate. You know, we get so emotionally caught up in relationships when we don't know ourselves well enough.
Yes. Oh, I love what you said that about the boundaries, because I'm currently in therapy, like CBT.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying it. And today we're talking about boundaries because I misunderstood something around it. Was like, you know, I actually have boundaries, but like when people are not respecting it, I was interpreting it as maybe, oh, you know, when they were trying to cross it, I didn't realize. She was like, no, that's them. That's them not, you know, probably not respecting their own boundaries, and not respecting yours and other people's boundaries. But the fact that they're on the outside of your bubble trying to get in, that doesn't mean your boundaries aren't there. You're there, you know, and I just realized, oh, okay, yeah. So actually I have control because I'm controlling whether I'm engaging or not, whether I'm responding to it or not. Mm-hmm. That's me respecting my little bubble. And then they can bark and try and whatever they do, or trying to reel me back in on the outside of the bubble. But that's nothing to do with me not having boundaries. And I was just like, oh, okay. So I was just going around like getting myself into like a, you know, hyping myself, like, you know, I guess like getting stressed out over it and realizing, oh, I don't have to. It's fine. I have boundaries.
Listen, boundaries are the hardest thing in the world to learn, and I think people don't take them serious enough. As a life person in lifelong therapy, which I am not shy about, and everybody should be in therapy. It's helpful for everybody. It doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. No. But it took me a long time to really understand what appropriate and healthy boundaries meant. So I am right there with you.
Yeah. Exactly. So, and there's this other thing that you mentioned about limiting beliefs, like on the creatives. And, you know, something popped up in my head. So I was just like, I wonder why does this happen? Why do I have those limiting beliefs? And because it's almost like a society belief, I feel. You know, it's a very common saying, you know, starving artists, you know, actors are always unemployed. You know, those sayings that people say, right? That we all say, I guess. And I was just thinking, well, wait a minute. We've had, was it Leonardo da Vinci with the Sistine Chapel, right? I think he was pretty wealthy for his time. Like, I think, so there has been artists in the past that have, you know, before our lifetime, I mean, I haven't checked his bank balance, I don't know, but I feel that he was doing quite well. But, you know, I think there has been patrons of the artist, and they've been commissioned to do work. And so I just wonder, why is it that, what is this that we're trying to, you know, muzzle people down and stop them from following their dreams?
Well, I think there's a couple things. First of all, big historical figures, and specifically like Da Vinci, were not wealthy in their time or not until near the end of their lives. I mean, Da Vinci worked as an apprentice for a very long time until he was pretty old, and a lot of his commissions came during his apprenticeship. And so, he spent the better part of decades, I want to say 30 years, proving his artisanship, right?
Wow.
And so I think culturally, we don't create valuable space for creatives. It's not like it's really difficult to go to school for art and graduate and be like, here's your $60,000 a year job, right?
Mm-hmm,
It's not like there's no entry level position that's going to support your family, in the traditional workspace. And so this is why so many creatives have turned to entrepreneurship, to kind of create that for themselves. So I think on the one end, the problem is that society doesn't value, art and creativity as a productive means or something that contributes to it. The other thing is that as artists, though, we have to remember that we don't need to just create to be paid for it. Mm-hmm. And I think that so many of us fall into this trap where we measure our worth by how much other people are valuing our art. And that's a really dangerous place to be in. You can still write a book, write a poem, paint a picture, sculpt something, whatever creativity looks like for you, that can still be valuable and fulfilling and meaningful, even if other people don't feel the same way about it. And I think this is something that, goes back to what you're talking about having these, about knowing yourself and having these truths. One of the things I did with a past therapist was I had to create this list of my indisputable truths. And it has been the most valuable thing to me that I have kept to this day, and I will continue forever. And one of my indisputable truths is that even if somebody else doesn't understand me, it doesn't change who I am. Mm-hmm, and I think that that's something that artists and writers and creatives really need to remember, that you have to first value the art that you make, and you have to love it, and you have to believe in it, because other people are only going to believe in it as much as you believe in it. And so if from the get-go you think to yourself, well, if you write a book and you start sending it out and it's not getting picked up right away, and you immediately go to that place oh, well, this book is terrible, or I'm not a good writer, or I made a mistake, or people don't like this. If you can't see the beauty in it yourself first, it'll keep you from continuing to push that next book out or that next project. So few writers specifically get picked up on their first book. It's the people who persevere and believe in their own art that keep creating that next project, or even maybe the third project is the one that, is your big hit. That's your ticket in. So I think we're really quick to be like, I'm not good enough, just because society doesn't really care about art as much as we think they do.
Yeah, and I think it's all maybe, I think it's also, because I wrote down the word perseverance when you were talking, and it really is that, I mean, there has to be context within that, right? When, you can't, for example, you can't persevere chasing someone who doesn't want you, right? That would be silly, right? That's creepy. But but perseverance in the arts, like you said, just because 10 publishers turn down your book or 100 publishers turn down your book, I think we have enough stories from the 1%, I guess, of the author who are the gazillionaires, I think J.K. Rowling, she was broke for a very long time. She was on benefits for a very long time. And so I think if she had given up, well, none of the whole generation wouldn't have had Harry Potter. And all these actors would have made a fortune on her story. There's a whole industry. She created a whole industry, and people, she created, household names based on her art, from a place when she was absolutely broke. And I think, there's many stories like that, I think, around to show that, it's that thing that I think when people maybe give up is because maybe in society there is this, with social media, maybe, that has enhanced it. But even before social media, you had these expressions like flash in the pan or overnight success, where there is no such thing. I mean, it's now the overnight success are things that go viral, but they kind of die out very quickly, right? What happens after that? And I think I think if people expect it to be easy, they may almost setting themselves up to fail, because they're like, oh, if it's not easy, it's not meant to be, the gods aren't with me, the universe or whatever it is they believe in. But I think it's almost like there are certain things in my life where I know I'm expecting it to be hard, so I don't get bogged down if I'm not getting it right straight away, right? Like say with the podcast, I've had so many mistakes, technical mistakes and whatnot. But I think it's like, if you know that things can take a while, you may be pleasantly surprised.
Definitely. But also remember, it's tricky, right? Because the system is rigged against you. Mm-hmm. It should be easy for you as a writer or an artist to give the world your work and have some sort of appreciation come back at you. Right. It should be easy to release something creative into the world and other people want to pay to explore that beauty of it. But it's not. So success then for us is a deep and committed investment in yourself.
Yeah.
It's a lot of deep internal work to continue to believing in yourself. And the one thing I always remind writers, and this really could apply to all creatives, is that if you wrote that book and it didn't sell, what did you learn personally from the experience of writing that book? Mm-hmm. How did it change you? And whatever the answer to that question is worthwhile. It's worthwhile, the practice and the time it took to write that book. There's something beautiful that came of it. And we forget to value those sorts of things just because it didn't land in our bank account.
Yeah. And I like that you said, like, it's an inside job, because it really is. And I know what I said is easier said than done, right? But it really is, like you said, like, just because no one is buying your sculpture doesn't mm-hmm. mean it's not a piece of art.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? It's something that you created. So you are a creative. There's no other way around it. And it's like, as long as and if that means that you have to go and do a Joe job on the side or a day job on the side, well, whatever it is that you get, I guess, everyone has different paths to it, right? But I remembered when I was pursuing acting, I mean, it was terrible. I didn't have that inner belief, I didn't have that thing where, I mean, I knew it was supposed to be hard. That was the belief I had, but I did stop it. I then transitioned to stand up, but I was just like, for me, it was just like, it was really hard to keep believing that I didn't believe I was an actress, because I wasn't actually, it wasn't my main source of income by very far. Right. It wasn't at all. It was really bad. So, so I think it is really hard. So I totally understand if people are, I get it. It's really difficult. And I think my mom said something that was, that I thought was really good. I remember one time she said, don't let it, like you said, you've let it become a weapon against you, because, sometimes it bring me down. And she's like, this has now become a weapon against you. Like, don't let it.
That's really powerful. Mm-hmm, and,
mm-hmm.
I think the proof is in the pudding there when you're saying, like, I never believed I was an actress because it wasn't, yeah. But really, you have to, if somebody reads my book and says, like, this is terrible, my immediate reaction is, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Because it has to be. We should all be open to constructive criticism and, like, being able to change and morph things to make them better and to always evolve and grow our craft, whatever that is. Sure. But to feel like you are abjectly bad at something is a lie you're telling yourself.
Yeah.
People are capable of so much more than they let themselves be capable of. I mean, just that commitment to something allows you to grow and be better and be exactly whatever it is you want to be. But it really does start with that beginning belief of, like, no, I'm good at this and this is what I'm meant to do.
The thing with the constructive criticism, I mean, I don't know if it comes with age, but, like, for me, if anyone, like, has feedback or negative opinions about, like, there's nothing someone can say about my podcast that will stop me doing it. Does that make sense?
Right.
Like,
yes.
I'll keep doing it as long as I'm enjoying, and as long as it's something that I feel that I'm enjoying it and I'm meant to do it. I'll keep going. Like, if I stop, it would be my decision. And it's almost like, I feel like if I was to get, I'm always after to improve. So I'd be listening to podcasts that I think are really outstanding, and I listen to that. It may give me encouragement or inspiration. But then, if I actually wanted to actively ask for a constructive critique, I'd go to someone who's doing it, right? I wouldn't go to, and it's always guys, by the way. I don't know why. It's thank you. Okay.
This is.
if you want to up level your podcast, or, if you want to do, and I'm like, I didn't ask you. You're not even doing it. Where is this coming from? And it's more annoying than anything else, but then I just let it go. I'm like, okay, just drop the drama. But yeah.
It's so interesting because I have so many clients who have poured their heart and soul into writing a book. And then the book is phenomenal. We release it. We have a launch. They have all of these great reviews. Everything's going so well. And then one guy will show up and be like, hey, I read your book and I feel like it's really didactic and that like you are doing some things here where maybe you could structure this a little differently. And then they internalize that and they come to me and they're like, wow, this is terrible. Like, what did we even do? And I'm like, first of all, it's one guy that when's the last time he wrote a book?
Mm-hmm. Is that Stephen King? I mean, if it's Stephen King, I'll listen to it.
It's always one guy with zero qualifications to be giving you the advice that they're giving you, and then you're like, oh my God, I'm terrible. Why do we do that?
Because also it's like, one of the things is like, if someone doesn't like something, like it'd be the equivalent of me going to an Italian food restaurant and not liking pasta and then criticizing them for serving pasta.
Right, exactly.
They're not going to stop serving pasta. Like, I'm just in the wrong place. It'd be really weird and it'll look neurotic if I did say, excuse me, I like to fill out a complaint. Where's the manager? It'd be weird. So, I'll just go to the Vietnamese restaurant or somewhere else. Right. Wherever I like the food, right? So it'd be weird for me to go there. And it's a bit like, maybe always ask yourself, like, what gives them the right? Because it's I believe in constructive criticism, I believe in development, but it's like you have to be careful whose opinion you let in.
Right. And also, you're not meant for everyone. Like you're never going to create something that's meant for everyone. Mm-hmm. What you create and what you're capable of is meant for certain people. And that's the idea behind having an audience, So, believe it or not everybody likes Harry Potter. So,
exactly.
And I think people trip themselves up when they're trying to become successful, especially in a creative world, when they try to create something that like, I want to make something everybody will love. Well, that's impossible. So you need to find where your people are. What are you trying to affect? Is there a change in the world that you want to see? Is there a certain audience for what you're doing? Like, the more niche you can get with your creation, the bigger your audience will be, really, as kind of backwards as that sounds, but it's true. Yeah. So yeah.
It's just like, I think if she were to do, if that's even possible, I don't know, but if she were to write a book that everybody liked, it may be very boring.
It would be chaotic.
It'll be a lot of people you have to serve. It's like, whew, that's a lot of. But I was just thinking, imagine if J.K. Rowling went after the first book, and some dude next door said, "This is really awful. There's too many characters. I don't follow. Why does he have a scar on his head? The scar should be on his arm." And she just went, "Oh my God, this is awful. Yes, I should quit. Let me just go and get a day job." Imagine, right. I mean, it's like they'll be crazy.
Plus, like, I mean, every piece of art you create, everything you write takes an ideological stance, just inherently, just because of who you are, because you're the one creating it. It is automatically embedded with, at least partially your beliefs and your values and your stance on a thing. And so it's okay for people to not like it. It's okay for people to disagree with it. That's the stuff of conversation. That's how you create conversation around art. That's literally the purpose of art. So you don't want everybody to love it. Your goal as an artist is to highlight something that people need to see that they're not seeing, or like highlight a different perspective around an issue. And that means that there are people out there who disagree with you, and there's just nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And that's also a proof of a healthy society. You want people to be able to have a different opinion to you and be able to express it. This is why I think it's great when people can have protests, even whether you agree or not. Right. That's part of a healthy, it's good that not everybody's pro-vaccine and then some people are pro-vaccine. It's only a reflection of a healthy society. We can make our own opinion, but I think a little bit of a rebellion, a little bit of whatever it is, you have to have, not everything is for everybody. And I think if everybody thinks the same and agrees all the time, that's when you're in a dictatorship a little bit. That's my opinion. I know we're going on a tangent, but...
No. It's not even a tangent. I agree with you. And also that art is such a wonderful way to create a healthy discourse around these sorts of things. So, if no matter how you feel about protests or the current political climate of the world, we should always first turn to art to try and see if we can mold or grow our perspectives and change them and have different kind of conversations around these things. Because when we stop looking to artists to interpret our feelings, then that's when we're just fighting and we're yelling at each other and we're just trying to like say like, I'm right and you're wrong, instead of allowing art to help us like grow in those ideas.
That is so true, because I think definitely art is like, it's a really great temperature check on society.
Yes.
And I think the minute you stop that, I think this is why, and everyone has different opinion on that, but I think especially nowadays, I really have a deep respect for, especially like stand-up comic who really are still out there just speaking out the way they've always done. And it's really difficult because nowadays, the truth of the matter is that regardless what is it you're going to talk about, it's going to hit on someone's sensitivity. Someone's going to be sensible to it. Let's say if you talk about cancer, someone would have had a parent that died of cancer and they're not going to find it funny. Or maybe they will. It depends what kind of humor they have, right? But there is always going to be something. And I think the minute we stop that, it to me, art is not only a temperature check, but it's also the door that you want to keep open to be able to have freedom of speech in society. And it's good that we don't agree, and it's good that we don't like everything. And if you don't like that particular comic or that particular book or sculpture, well, guess what? You don't have to look at it, listen to it, or buy it. That's why God gives you a neck, is to turn your head and look at the other way and buy a ticket to the other show,
Absolutely. And I really admire stand-up comedy for the way that it kind of challenges us and
exactly.
and uses grief to process differently. And I think art does that. I think that it challenges us in a way that, like, yes, if it hits your sensitivity, but like, why? I get frustrated when people feel like something is offensive or something makes them feel uncomfortable, and that's fine, but then they don't ask why. And I think the truth of what art tries to communicate is in that answer. So, if you're reading something or you're listening to a comic or you're seeing a piece of art that just feels so uncomfortable to you, don't just walk away. Ask yourself why. And the answer to that question is that new conversation.
But you see, but that's because you've gone to therapy for so long. Right? So, like me, I've been in and out of therapy for a long time, and it's like the minute you have a trigger, that's an opportunity for growth, self-reflection. But some people feel like that's an opportunity to be a cyberbully, and it's like no, that's not what you're supposed to be using your trigger for, because it's the equivalent of going to the Italian restaurant and making a complaint over pasta because you're celiac. If you're celiac, not to order pasta. That's it. End of the story. Actually, I wanted to ask, this is going to come across really ignorant, but I've always been wondering, and I guess I could Google it, but what is a bestseller? Because I know you said like that's kind of like immediately like an immediate possibility, sure. But I feel like when I go into stores, I'm very confused when I keep seeing bestseller, number one. Yes. And I'm like, how many number ones in 1 year can we have? Like, what does it mean?
There are several different types of bestsellers, so it is not an ignorant question at all. The most simplistic answer I can give you is that, so there is the New York Times bestseller, obviously, and there is only one of those.
So is that per year? Is that once a year there's a New York Times bestseller?
Yeah, or maybe it's more than once a year, but there's only a couple of them. And it's a short list. And it's all based on sales, in the same way that like record albums, if they go platinum or something like that, it's a similar system. But the other way that people have become bestsellers is really through Amazon. So you can become a bestseller in a category. So if let's say, for example, you wrote a cookbook for mothers with celiac kids, that just comes to mind because you were just talking about that. Mm-hmm. You can, on the back end, mark your book as that category. So they're called BISACs. They're categories for all different types of genres, and they get really niche and really small. And so a lot of times people will categorize their book in these really small niche categories and rightfully so, because they fit there, but they don't have a lot of competition. There might be 5 other books on the market. So if you are smart and you strategically create a spike in sales, then you become the bestseller in that category. And so like people aren't walking around saying like, I'm the bestseller in cookbooks for moms with kids with celiac. They're just saying I'm a bestseller, because you can use that for your marketing and you can push more sales. And so in that way, that is an immediate opportunity. That's a really like micro version example, but you can also become a bestseller in kind of the bigger, that's like a subcategory of a subcategory. So if you write a fiction book, it's going to be difficult to become a bestseller in fiction because there are millions of fiction books. But if you are, fantasy, and then you're like another subgenre of that fantasy. So there are ways to become a bestseller like in multiple different categories on the market. But yes, New York Times bestseller generally are people who are traditionally published with one of the big 5 publishing houses and have had, millions of sales.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that clarifies it. That makes sense now. That makes sense.
Yeah. It's a complicated industry, which again, I take issue with because it creates so many barriers to people who feel like their purpose is to be a writer, which is genuinely the foundation of my business, is to say like, we need to create inclusive access to the publishing industry. So some of us have taken the time to educate ourselves, years and years to educate ourselves on every little piece of it, so that you have one person that you can go to that says, this is how you do everything from content creation to editing, to producing a book, to publishing a book, to marketing a book, to getting it picked up, to all of those things. Because I really feel for novice writers who are out there just wondering, like, how does any of this work? How does any of it happen?
Yeah, no, I did see on your website the mentorship that you offer to like five authors every year. And I was like, it's so comprehensive. I was like, oh, I want to write a book now. I was just like, I felt like it's just so like it just felt like a really enveloping, being looked after on so many levels. And so I think I can't even imagine, I'm not an author. I've never written a book. I have thought about writing something around the podcast, but I don't know yet what it would be. But it's, I think, it must be such a huge process, and to have someone to sort of, I think like anything that's creative, you're always gonna go. It's so hard to sometimes look at the end goal and the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think, especially a book, is like, because that's something that takes its time, and it's a process. But then there's the business side of it, and then there's the social media, and it's so much to do. So now I can understand why there's like a need for that.
But it should be fun. Why is it terrible? Society hasn't created structures and systems for creatives to thrive and to make it simple. And it's a shame, because like, if you feel like your purpose is to be a writer, like, you should absolutely be able to have the space to enjoy writing.
Yes.
It shouldn't be this kind of labor and frustrating thing. And 99% of the people who are in my inbox feel frustrated and tired, and it just makes me sad.
Yeah, I think it's also like, I think if you don't have people around you who understand you and support you, it's very difficult. And that's most of us, right? Because I mean, a lot of the majority, I mean, I haven't looked at the stats, but I'm imagining the majority of society live in the, work for someone else, and whether it's a corporate job or they have like a job that's sort of, like, for example, if you're in a trade, right? So if you're a carpenter, you go, you do the job, it's visible, you get paid for it. Everything is a lot more direct. How do you call it? Instant gratification almost, or every month you get your salary, whatever it is. So I think that is very hard, I think, for anyone maybe in that realm to understand what it's like to be a creative and to actually having to make your own money in that from your own inner world, or whatever I don't know how you describe it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you should be able to go to school, get training, graduate, and then work in a position that allows you to do those things. I mean, there are writerly things you can do, like journalism, or if you want to work for TV or media and things like that. But even those positions, a lot of like TV writing positions, I mean, you're working your way up into writer's room. So you're not making money in the beginning. You're just networking, trying to make it happen. It's the same thing as being a novelist. So it's tough.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It doesn't pay much when you start off in those industries.
But it can.
It can, yeah. But I know, like, for example, here at the BBC, like, I know when you start off, when you're an intern, forget it, you know. It's like they expect you almost to work for free, and it's really is. I mean, I don't know what it's like now. This is like going back 20 years now, but, you know, it's all... I never worked for them, but when I was looking at jobs and placements back then. But yeah, and it's just, it's really, it's difficult, and it was almost like, unless you have, you know, a family that can support you,
right?
It was almost impossible to you can't really work for £200 a month in London and expect to make rent and everything else. It's just impossible. So it's almost like it almost cuts off a whole demographic of people. It's really difficult.
This idea that creatives need to like earn their keep somehow, that you need to like work your way up to be respectable, is really degrading. Some people are just talented and deserve all of the monetary benefits that come with a regular full-time job, in the same way that, like, I might be really good at math and it's super easy for me to graduate school and go get a good job as an accountant. But if I'm really good at writing a book, why can't I graduate and go get a job somewhere writing? And so, you know, this is why creatives don't believe in themselves, because we have a system that degrades their talent.
Yeah, and I think also there's this other side of it, that it's important to have, you know, this safe space where you can flourish, almost like a flower. You're going to water it. And I think when we're out here having to be in that creative space, but at the same time going out there slaying dragons, working in a job we don't like to pay the bills, making life decisions every time you go to the supermarket. You know, am I going to get the nice chocolate or the cheap chocolate? You know, it's like we shouldn't have to go around like making all these decisions. And it's draining, right? Having to feel this way. I know, because I've been in that place for a very long time, you know, and you know, and it's just like it's hard to then go home and be like, oh, I'm fabulous creative. You know? Yeah, you need that. So you need like that moral, emotional support, or that financial support, because all of those things are there to almost keep that safe space that where you can then go in and flourish, right? That's how I feel. I mean, looking at it the wrong way, but I wish it wasn't so. But sometimes I feel like, oh, I wish I had like, maybe I should have like a rich husband or something. I don't know. I'm like, you know. And then I'm like, I need to be my own rich husband. This is very depressing. But I
hear you.
Yeah, and it's so it's just you know, do what you got to do. Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, I got started late, having to like go back to school for another degree, and just, you know, exactly like how you feel. I came out thinking, if I have to go through kind of working my way up from like janitor level position in these publishing houses up to like where I want to be, like, how do I get that editor-in-chief position? Like, I'm too old for this shit, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so, you know, sometimes we just have to envision another way, and we have to create that path ourselves. And if there's enough of us that keep doing that, we'll create structural changes in the way that we value artists and the way that we operate and accept them into society.
Yeah, and also you're an example for that then, right? Because like you've done it, and it's like, I think if we don't know what the model exists of being able to create, you know, other ways to make money. Like now I've had to become like really creative around that ever since the pandemic. You know, I had to pivot. You know, I had a day job and all that, and that all disappeared. So it's like, you know, but the minute you see, oh, that's also how I can do it. This is how I can do it. Oh, okay. And it's important. We kind of like touched on it briefly earlier, but I was just wondering if there's, and I may be wrong now, but this is how I read it on your website. But is there a reason behind that you've decided to focus on helping women, or have I misread down your website?
You have not misread it, and this is the part of your podcast where I piss off a lot of any men listening. In full transparency, I don't work with solely women. I do have a couple men that I work with, but I am extremely picky. And the reason for that is because for many years when I started, I wasn't picky at all. And I really learned the hard way, for all people, that as a business owner, you need to be careful, especially as an entrepreneur, and vet out the people that you're going to work with and to make sure that you're a good partnership. And what I do, people come to me with their passion projects and ask me basically to kind of pull them apart and show them how to do it better. And that can be a really vulnerable, emotionally difficult process. And so that means that me and that client have to be a great match for each other. We have to be able to basically be friends. There has to be a trust there. We're going to be talking a lot. They're going to get upset with me. We have to be able to recover from that. So it's really important to me that me and my clients are well matched.
Because it's quite intimate.
It's very intimate and it's very difficult. And so I had several men as clients in the beginning who deeply took advantage of me, who every single one, and it became a pattern that I noticed that I was bringing on men who were doing projects that I was interested in the in the mental health world, or like creatively, or like these fiction projects that I was that were my expertise, that I was a really good match for, but ultimately ended up wanting to not pay for the services they were provided, or not put in the work and expect me to do it. And then when I didn't, like, several of them had tried to like bully me or threaten me with lawsuits and things, and they were baseless things. But I also at the time didn't have like the resources or really the emotional wherewithal to kind of stand up against it. And I had to take a moment and sit back and talk to some people that I trust and evaluate, like, what's happening here and why is it only the men that this is happening with? And the conclusion I really came to is a conclusion that I've come to in several areas of my life, even ones that aren't professional areas of my life, is that, oftentimes, especially as powerful, confident women, as a woman business owner, I have run into several men who have really devalued that and have come to me as a professional, asking me for professional services, but at the same time want to be to kind of show this dominance in our relationship. And so there's like this kind of mind fuck that happens when I work with men that I am just not interested in participating in. Like, I can't edit your book, help you get published and succeed, but also like have to fight the patriarchy through our relationship. Like, I don't have, I can make space for that in my personal life when I need to, but it just became too much. And so, for years I didn't work with men at all. And I really found that there's such a special camaraderie that I build with the women that I work with that I really enjoy. And we understand each other differently. It's so different to work with a woman who's writing a memoir than work with a man who's writing a memoir, because there are moments where I've had to be like, no, you were horrible here. You're wrong. You need to kind of think about the way that you think about women and whatever. But working with women is such more, it's more rewarding. I'm adding more to their narrative. I'm helping them unpack it differently. Whereas with men, it just feels like a battle. So now I do work with a couple of men now, and they're wonderful. They're men who are like deeply in touch with themselves, who are feminists, and who are writing brilliant things that people should read. So that's really become my litmus test, is like, if you're a man, I'm happy to interview you, but you better believe I'm going to ask you about your feminist beliefs.
It's interesting because it is like, a lot of things you said, I'm like, yes. I also have this experience where there's a few things here that you said that I wanted to sort of raise. Is like, one of the things I've noticed is that I've had men come to me, approach me, right? I didn't know who they were, approach me, whether it was to be on the podcast or whether it's to ask for help around podcasting. And like you said, it's like they then think that they're the ones helping me. And it's like, it's just a weird, like you said, like a mind fuck. It's like, I've had to like really sort of learn like to set boundaries and just like let go of stuff. Like, because if I think about it too much, it's going to really makes me so angry.
Right.
So, and I don't want to be in that space. I don't want to be, I'm not giving them permission to make me upset. Like, that's not happening anymore. And I think it's like you said, like, And again, it's not all men. Like I've had wonderful men, come on, and I have wonderful male friends, and they're not necessarily, I think, feminist, because I don't go into like isms and stuff like that. But I think, because I definitely I like to think like more like humanist. I just want everyone, all of us, to be. We're all different, but we're all equal. Okay, let's just like treat everyone, and let's not do the mind fuckery. And it's like, but what I've noticed, right? It's only something I've noticed in the last couple of years is those microaggressions that comes in that are really subtle, and it's the way it would be something how they talk about women. I mean, I've had texts like, it's just so gross. I can't even actually give it room here. It's like, I just really feel so creeped out. But it's just like, it's those little microaggressions that is, like you said, like that to me, I find, that's what the patriarchy is. Well, I never really realized this before, about all these little things that they're not, on its own, they're not big enough to make a big fuss, but they are there. And they're almost worse than someone just being overtly, disgusting against women, right? Like saying something. It's those little aggression. But I think when we experience those things, like, it's part of what we were saying earlier, like it's only like, it's always the men. I'm sorry to be honest, it sounds like I'm bashing men. I do love men, but not all of you. And it's like, some of you are on the shit list. And it's like, but it's those things that it's like, there's the same men who will come in and give, those advice that one is shit, and two, I didn't ask for. And it's like, it's just really annoying. And it feels like almost like, you think, well, I'm like this little woman. And I am feminine, I love when a man takes me out on a date. Don't get me wrong, I love all this stuff, but it's like, there has to be a respect. And I think those experiences have really made me appreciate good men. Yeah. Like those who just respect and are kind. And there's tons of them. Unfortunately, there's those little fuckers out there that sort of ruins it, gives you a bad taste, Well,
I think so much of it is sadly subconscious.
They don't realize. They think they actually think they're being helpful, and they're being really nice and funny, and they're not. Right.
And I think a lot of them just feel, they've been given so much permission to always control the situation and to think of themselves and as men in general as, this better version of women. Like a perfect example is I had a male client who hired me as a professional to edit their book, and then proceeded to send their edited book to like several of their friends who are, in their words, quote unquote, teachers, to check my work. Whoa. Which, listen, that's fine, because I'm not worried about whether or not I'm right or wrong. I know I'm right. I'm one of the most qualified editors you can find. That's fine. You can send it to whoever you want. But what makes me angry about that is this idea that you don't trust me as a professional. Like if you didn't think that a woman editor had the qualifications or the intelligence to properly edit your book, why did you come to me? And so to send me an email to say like, I checked up on this as if you're helping me is quite aggressive and really an active control. And it was really, really demeaning. And I have had, it always blows my mind when a man will like, so when somebody wants to work with me, I have them send me their manuscript, because obviously I need to make an evaluation of whether or not this is the right project for me. And I can't tell you how many men send me manuscripts of these like brutally sexualized female characters, and they think like what they're writing is like beautiful and and like okay, and that they're exalting women in this way. But because one of the only ways that they comfortably know how to exalt a woman is to objectify her physicality, and then to use all of this really strange language around it, and to make them subservient to their male main characters. I get so many manuscripts like that I don't even respond to anymore, which is another reason why I just can't work with men, because that work, like if I worked with all of them, I would have to charge them double for like not only the editing work, but then like the lesson in why this is not okay.
And also the impact. Also, I think as you're letting that into your energy, right?
100%.
Yeah, I mean that's why I believe in. You don't have to respond in everything. Like right. I used to feel like I have to respond to everybody. I'm like no anymore. I don't. I really, really don't. And I think it's like how how that guy sent it off to like all his teacher friends, right? Who I'm assuming are men.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So to all his male teachers, and the question that popped up in my mind was like, would you have done that had you been a guy?
No.
Exactly.
Never.
And
Never.
I think that's the thing is like the amount of time I've been told, when I used to work in events and all kind of stuff, and it was always guys going, oh, you're so opinionated. But it was saying that as if it was a bad thing. And I'm like, I thought we were just having a conversation. I didn't even think that was coming across, because I know what they meant. They meant like it was aggressive or whatever, or too strong. And I'm like, well, dude, then you're not my guy. I mean, we can't even be friends, can we? But I have a lot of male friends who love being around women of all different kinds of flavors, whether they're timid or stronger, or strong-minded. Like I have my friends who really deeply respect, they just get it. And I've never heard them say they don't have to say that they're feminist or not, but you can just tell the vibe is like, it's respectful and they're like women. And some of them are not, and, not friends with those anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think all women grow up that way too. Like as an introvert, as a person who, it kind of depends on how well I know you, how much I open up. I still grew up being told I was bossy and opinionated and all of those things. And so I think it's just language we're all given. We're all used to hearing to keep us from verbalizing too many of our thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's terrible.
Yeah, and I even just had a friend the other day text me saying that he had issues with his boss. I was like, oh gosh, feel sorry to hear that. But then he just went, she's really opinionated. And I was just like, okay, well, like, I get it. It may be difficult, but would you have said that if this was a guy? And he's like, oh, there's this whole thing around white men are disgusting. I'm like, no, I'm not talking about that. I don't agree in witch hunt either, but I'm just saying that doesn't mean that the patriarchy does not exist. He was like, yeah, fair point. Okay, I get it. Okay, so Amanda, now really enjoying this conversation with you. And so I want to ask you the same finishing thoughts that I ask all my guests, the 2 questions. And the first one is, what do you wish you'd known or learned at 18?
Oh, goodness. I wish I'd known what I'm capable of. Like, I wish I'd known how to believe in myself, and to start doing the things that I wanted for the future me right then. I spent a lot of time in my younger years and in my adult years just working towards things and thinking like, I'll get there. And really it was just a way for me to procrastinate and put off the things that I wanted in life, because I hadn't yet grappled with a lot of those limiting beliefs we were talking about earlier. And I put my focus in a lot of places that it didn't need to be. So I just wish at 18 I had known that like I was powerful, that I was talented, that what I had to say had meaning for other people, and that I could start doing those things right then. I didn't need anything else or anybody else to give me that permission that I felt like I needed.
And what stuff do you not put up with anymore?
Oh God, like everything.
Apart from those like awful people we just talked about.
Yeah. So I think if there's any entrepreneurs listening, they'll understand exactly what I'm saying. I spent a lot of the beginning years of my business thinking that I needed to work around the clock and that I needed to be here 100% of the time to ever be successful. And I really worked myself to death for many, many years. And now, like, I don't put up with that shit from myself.
Yes.
And I think that that's really important. I stick to a really strict structure for myself and a routine, and I create space for myself to just live and grow and be and think, and I'm not constantly in the business. And I have found, I can promise you that spending time outside of your business makes your business much more productive.
Yes.
And so the things that I don't put up with really are products of me being good to myself. Because if I'm good to myself, I won't allow anybody else to not be good to me.
Yes. And you know what? I love it that you said that, because I've just realized not that long ago. I mean, I knew I shouldn't always be just focused, or pushing myself or feeling guilty that I'm not always working on the business, especially because, you're trying to create your own money, right? You don't have a paycheck coming in at the end of the month. So there was that, but there was also this combination of, I think like the structure for women, I think society is not really built for, we are, I mean, this is where like men and women, we are different, like the hormonal or endocrine system, right? Because our hormones are different. So we as women, I mean, for me, I can feel like I can't be productive at 100% every single day of the month, in the same way that a man may have a better, easier access to that, right? And it's just like I realized actually that's okay, like to not feel bad when I need to have like a day of like just walking outside or just doing a Netflix day, but just not feeling guilty about it, because I know in the background something is happening. And then once I do the work, I don't even need as many hours. Like I just need to do it, and then like the results are there basically. I don't have to be forcing myself every day to push something that's not there. Like I have to almost like learn to listen to my flow in my body.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And also it's okay to reward yourself. A lot of times I put tasks on my calendar and, I'll take an hour or two to complete this task, and then I go do something for myself. And I'll do that multiple times throughout the day. Yeah. And it makes me so much more productive, because when I do sit down to do those tasks, I'm not like tired and I'm not upset about doing them. I'm just completing them with passion and motivation, and then afterwards I'm gonna have like the best latte and a walk.
Yes, exactly. But that's the thing that I learned with my therapist, is this like the pillars. I think she called them the pillars, and it was with CBT anyway. And she said you have to. she was like all you do is productivity, like work, and this is why you're not feeling imbalanced. And I had to literally schedule in stuff that make me feel good.
Oh yeah,
and I'm doing it now a lot more consciously. I thought I was doing it, but then I wasn't really doing it, and like for example tonight I have like film club and I'm so excited.
Oh yay, that sounds great.
Yeah, it's like things like that. And so it's just, you have to do stuff like that. And I just realized I don't know if you're okay to just, I have like this question I realized I haven't asked you.
Okay.
Is that we talked about, so like, how society almost makes us feel that, if you're creative, you're going to be broke and starving. And there are other ways. And I was just wondering if you wouldn't mind, without giving away all your secrets, but just to give us, what are the things that, for example, like authors, that's your jam, right? So what are the ways that authors, just so they can have this seeds planted in their mind, what are the ways that authors can also make money?
Yes. So writers often think that they have to write a book and the only way they're going to make money is if somebody picks that up and they sell it. But the truth is that if you are a writer, you're an observer, you're a thinker, and you have a lot to say about a lot of things. And whatever you're writing about is sourced in, like I said before, your beliefs and your values in some sort of issue or thing. And so to monetize that, you might think about creating workshops. You might think about, like, if you're a person who's comfortable speaking in front of people or you want to learn to do that, you might think about speaking engagements. You might think about creating small, like, mini versions of your writing that you can put out, like, serialized for your followers. It's really about being the creative person that you are. When I published my poetry book in 2018, I don't know why. It came to me out of the absolute blue one day in a November. And I said, what I really want to do with this, because it didn't feel finished to me, is I want to put it on the stage. And I want it to be a spoken word play, which wasn't like a thing that existed. So I kept trying to explain it to people, and people were like, cool, but that's crazy. Like, what are you even talking about? It was really hard to even communicate it. And I thought, I just have to do this. Like, I just have to create this thing. And in 6 months, we created the costumes, we hired actors, I wrote a script, we did it. We put it on the stage, and when people saw it, they got it, and they thought, oh, and it affected them differently. It was so cool to watch a book of poetry turned into this other medium and people be able to experience it differently, and financially paid off. So I think it's really about believing in all the facets of your creativity. Like, yes, you're a writer. yes, you can write a book, but what else can you do with those words? What else can they, like, what other lives do they have to live? And really, I always tell people, write that down. I keep like a big board in my office, like a vision board style. You don't have to call it that, but whatever. But write those things down, map them out. What does that look like? And go after them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is great. Some fantastic examples in there, and I love that because I think, that's absolutely brilliant. I don't know if you realized, but you said that book of poetry came out of the blue, and it's called Blue Rooms.
I know. Yeah.
So, Amanda, could you please tell us, please tell us where can people find you? How can they work with you? Do you work on like online as well, like long distance? Give us all the good stuff.
Sure. So on social media, you can find me everywhere at Editor Amanda. And then you can contact me through my website at amandafilippelli.com. I do long distance. I've worked with people internationally. So I'm super open to that. One of my clients right now she lives in Italy and she's wonderful. So that's no barrier for me. I do take on 5 women a year for a year-long program, which is my mentorship. And those women are women who are interested in not only writing a book, but then creating a platform and becoming working authors. So that's the idea of that. But I also do just regular book editing. So if you have a book that you need help writing or that you've written and you want edited or you want help publishing, you can come to me for that as well. We do the Right to Heal workshops. If you're interested in bringing a Right to Heal workshop to your organization or to your city, you can reach out. We have like a team of people who come and are happy to travel and to conduct the workshop wherever you are. We've done them in multiple cities, and they're one of my favorite things in the world. We do an annual writers conference. It's this weekend, so by the time this airs, it probably will have already happened. Yeah. But you can go to theauthorconference.com and put your name on the list for when it opens up again.
Wow. Thank you so much, Amanda. I've really enjoyed this conversation with you, and I can't wait to just see where everything takes you and where all your mentees, where they, the road they're going to go to and all the things they're going to achieve. Like, this has been really exciting. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful.
And that's our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to rate, review, share it, subscribe it on iTunes, follow it on Spotify, or whichever platform you listen from. However you show love is how you can support this show. Drop me your questions or suggestions for future episodes via the website at angie-ness.com, or come and find me on Instagram at Tool for Dish It Podcast. See you next week, and until then,
using health inappropriately.